All right, so we are going to talk about to
Yeah.
write goal, talking about present level. So let's start by just talking about how to write. Right? So when we criteria, but the specific, measurable, achievable, relevant. We also want standard driven, significant, um, adapted, but that does not mean that. So, for example, if you might say for given the use of materials and assistive student will select visual choices, identify the solution of a different problem, and 75% with 75% accurate data collections. That goal kind of stand it. So let's just say that that student is in a grade where they may be expected to add and subtract within, but we know that that is not something a student can achieve. It's not achievable at this time. They don't have those foundational skills. It, it's okay to write an addition goal that is at their level. You still want to be taking on the spirit of that standard, right? The spirit of the standard is being able to add and subtract within a amount. So what we're adapting there for our based on their specific abilities, making it achieve instead keeping it addition, but maybe moving that to sums no greater than 20 or even sums no greater than 10. Like that's just an example of how you can adapt a goal to still be standards driven. So let's talk a little bit about our present levels. So the present level of performance is going to be specific to the area. So the example I'm using here is math. You want to make sure that you have a based on, and that based on is going to be whatever you're using in order to um, say how you took the data. Let's just say it like that. So if you are taking data based off of formal assessments, informal assessments, you're doing it based on progress monitoring, classroom observation, whatever it may be, that's what you're going to put here as your based on. So let's say that you, just as a hypothetical, are using progress monitoring and classroom collected data. Let's just say that. So you might say, based on progress monitoring and classroom collected data, the student is currently able to, and you want to start with an able to sentence. So based on your data, what are they able to do? And you want to make sure that in this present level, you are including actual data. So we need percentages, we need how many data points that's based off of. So as an example, you might say, based on classroom assessments and progress monitoring, whatever it is, student is currently able to identify numbers 1 to 10 with 80% accuracy based on 20 observable data points. So you want to make sure that you're putting that information in there. This is really important because all of your present levels should have at least one, preferably more, but at least one piece of concrete data in them. And you should definitely be using that on their I can statement. So what are they able to do? And then you can include as many able tos as you want. So he is able to identify shapes. He is able to identify colors. He is able to, I don't know, point to identify a group of objects that are less than or greater than. Just think about the things that he can do. Those are his present levels. You can have as many able tos as you want. There's really no restriction on that, but make sure when you do an able to, you're including a data point, a percentage, how many data points that's based off of. We don't want to just be putting rogue skills in with no data to back it up. After you do the able to statements, you're going to want to put a not yet able to statement. And that is also sometimes it's called a deficit statement. That's just going to be what they can't currently do. And you want to make sure that you only have the amount of I cannot do statements that you're willing to write goals for, if that makes sense. So if you say a student is not yet able to um, add within 20, subtract within 20, they're not yet able to identify or complete a comparative value statement by selecting the appropriate symbol, like greater than, less than, equal to. If you're going to say that they can't do all these things, be prepared to write goals for all of those things, because the only thing we want to see in the present level is what they cannot do and what we're going to be doing to address what they cannot do. So you're going to say, just as an example, um, the student is not yet able to solve addition problems within 20 with sums no greater than, or I'm sorry, solve addition problems with sums no greater than 20. That just links back to my goal. So you're going to say what they cannot do, and then you're going to insert an impact statement. So you have your deficit statement, and then you're going to write an impact statement based off of what you're saying they're not able to do. So this student's deficit or skill gap in his ability to solve addition problems impacts his academic ability to meet the expectations of the general math curriculum. The student's deficit or skill gap in his ability to solve addition problems impacts his functional ability to blank. So this impact statement needs to be academic because it's math, but it can also be functional. So if you have a math goal that is related to maybe counting money, then you could say that it impacts their ability academically and then also functionally. You're not always going to have a functional impact statement when you're talking about academic goals, but if you can find a functional statement, that's good as well. So with this one, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily need to put a functional statement in here. I would be fine with just doing the academic ability. So impacts the academic ability to meet those grade level expectations, blah, 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 blah. All right. So after you've written those present levels of performance, let's go ahead and talk about the actual goal itself. So we talked a little bit about what's required in the goal. You want to make sure, and that's right down here, you can look at it. So in this one, I have given the use of adaptive materials and assistive technology. You want to have a given. So what are you going to give this student in order to complete this goal? Are you going to give them a set of 4 visual addition questions? Are you going to give them a combination of visual supports, like whatever you're going to do? What are you going to do? I like to kind of generically sometimes say adaptive materials because sometimes when we're writing these goals, we're not exactly sure what we need yet, right? We know that the materials are going to be adapted. I know that I can't just put 4 plus 6 in front of a student and say, solve it, right? So that kind of leaves it up to like, well, maybe I need to add some visual supports or like those sorts of things. So adaptive materials kind of encompasses all of that. I have assistive technology just as an example, because in my hypothetical, I know that the student is going to need assistive technology, whether that be low tech, high tech, whatever it is. Maybe they use, let's just say, partner assisted scanning and a voice output device. That would be assistive technology. I know of the student that they need that. Or let's just say they need a no tech or low tech option. So they might be looking at visual choices, and visual choices are an assistive technology, right? As far as AAC is concerned. So I have assistive technology on there. Just to like reiterate that, I also say student will select from a field of 3 visual choices to identify the solution of an addition problem. So what are you going to have them do? And you have to make sure that it's measurable. So you want to have what they're going to do, make sure it's attainable, make sure it's something that is feasible for them to achieve within a year. And then you're going to want to make sure that it's measurable. So I'm going to have them do this thing with 75% accuracy over 3 consecutive data collections. When you see the 75% accuracy over 3 consecutive data collections, the 75% accuracy is the mastery criteria, and the 3 consecutive data collections is going to be your maintenance. So we want to make sure that it's not just a fluke, right? You come out on Monday and you just happen to get 75% accuracy, but then you got 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 25, 0, 0, 25. We can't say that you master that goal just because you got 75% accuracy one time on a Monday. You know, flukes happen. That's honestly how math works. So I want to make sure that they're doing it 3 consecutive data collections. That's just a preference. You might want them to do it 5. It really depends on the skill, right? And how often you are measuring it. Let's say you're doing a name identification skill. Well, you might ask them to identify their name 10 times in a day. So if you're doing it that frequently, you may want it to be over 10 consecutive data collections. It just depends on the specific skill that you're asking them to do and how often. But you might not want them to be necessarily doing this skill 10 consecutive times because that may be excessive, right? To have 75% accuracy or more 10 consecutive times on an addition. I don't know. It really just depends on how frequently you're doing it. You know, if they are mastering this addition goal 10 times in a row with 75% accuracy, it may be time to move on to a different skill because as soon as the skill is mastered, it's important to go ahead and meet as an IEP team and decide on what goal is going to come next. We want to always be growing here. All right, so then you get into the goal details. Is this a goal related to transition? If they are in transition, yes. If they are not, no. And then assistive technology, if they're using assistive technology, yes. If they are not, no. If you're not sure if they're using assistive technology, this is a great question for your speech pathologist, or maybe for your occupational therapist. Like that would be a good thing to ask of them. Method of progress monitoring, you're just going to want to put whatever way you're progress monitoring on here. If it's worksheets, I personally just always say data sheets because no matter what, I'm going to be moving anything, whether it's observational or a work sample or anything like that, I'm going to be putting it on data sheets. So me personally, I always like to have data sheets in there, but you can have additional things in there as well. Mastery criteria for this particular goal is 75%. If it's 80% for a goal you're doing, it's going to be an 80 here. You want to make sure you're putting the mastery criteria. This is important. Let's say that rather a percentage, you are saying you want them to do this task in 4 out of 5 opportunities. There's a couple ways that you can, well, okay, let's say 3 out of 4 for the purposes of me just doing math right now. If you want them to do it in 3 out of 4 trials, let's say trials. So I same goal, but I say in 3 out of 4 trials over 3 consecutive data collections. Um, I would either make that mastery criteria 75%, that's fine, or you can put a 3 here. It does not really matter which one you do. You just want to make sure that mastery criteria is indicative of the accuracy that you have set in the goal. Next, you go into objectives. So you're going to say add objective. Once you select Once you select that they are going to be on the extended content course of study, ECATS is going to require you to have those 2 objectives. So don't worry, it's not going to let you move forward unless you have what you need. So you want to add those 2 objectives. This is just an example of one way you can do it. So I have it here in ascending accuracy. So the overall mastery criteria is 75. Same skill is going to be with 55% accuracy for objective 1 and 65% accuracy for objective 2. So that is just one way that you can do it. Let's say you have it to be in 4 out of 5 trials. You might want objective 1 to be 2 out of 5 trials. You might want objective 2 to be 3 out of 5 trials, like that sort of thing. There's other ways that you can do this as well. It does not have to be accuracy driven. It can be skill based. So let's say that you want them to be solving addition problems with sums no greater than 20. Maybe the first objective is to solve addition problems with sums no greater than 10. And then objective 2 would be sums no greater than 20. That's an option 2. I personally usually like to do mastery criteria increases for my objective, but that's just because that is easier for me to take data on. It's how I like to take data. It really just depends on your preferences. You also are going to find that, yeah, it's really easy to use those mastery criteria type objectives when you're talking about math and reading and writing. Like, sure, that it's a little bit easier, but when you talk about behavior, sometimes that can be more of a challenge. So you might want to use like some of those skill based, like just for example, I don't know, if you have a functional goal about following a following a 10-step instruction about washing hands or something. That's the only thing I can think of right now. And you want them to be able to solve the first 3 steps in the sequence, and then you want them to solve the next 3 steps. That's just an example of you're not going to be able to write that goal with mastery criteria, right? Because you are looking at a goal that is really more skill-based in nature. Just know that if you're using progress monitoring on ECATS, makes it very challenging to monitor skill-based goals and objectives rather than those mastery criteria driven goals. Okay, I hope that helps. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.